All right, guys, welcome back. Sticks and Stones Unfiltered. Today's guest is going to be Pittsburg County Sheriff Frankie McClendon. Pittsburg County's eighth largest county in the state of Oklahoma. He's going to sit down at the table, tell his story, where he was raised, and what he's been doing for the last 35 years in law enforcement. Looking forward to getting into it today. Well, Frankie, so tell me, where you were raised and...
A little bit about my background is I was born and raised in Pittsburg County, just west of McAllister. Grew up out at Arpaylor, Oklahoma. I'm sure if you're familiar with Pittsburg County, you kind of know where Arpaylor's at. So, graduated from Stewart High School in 1984. And after that, I done 2 years of college at Eastern Oklahoma State College. Got an associate's degree there. Then went from there to East Central University in Ada. Okay. Graduated there with a bachelor's degree in education.
In education?
Education. I thought I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. That was my lifelong dream. Even when I graduated, I wanted to be a coach and be a teacher. And graduated at midterm in 1989. Of course, it's hard to find a teaching degree or a teaching position at midterm, so I moved back to McAllister. And at that time, I didn't want to do any substitute teaching, but my dad was in law enforcement. At that time, he knew the sheriff and asked me to go over there and see if I could maybe find a job for 3 or 4 months until summer gets there. And then my plan was to apply for a teaching position and be a teacher and a coach. That was my dream, and that was my plan.
Did you do sports when you were in high school
or
college?
Played high school baseball. Played 4 years of college baseball.
Really?
Played at Eastern and played at East Central and Ada. So,
okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, I was on scholarship at both places, so cool. Kind of got to fulfill that dream and realized that the chances of making the major leagues, I was not going to be the next Johnny Bench. So, anyway, that was an eye-opener, so I moved back home, and like I said, I went to work at the sheriff's office December of 1989.
December of 89.
Yeah.
And so how long did you stay at the sheriff's office?
Well, like I said, the plan was for 3 or 4 months.
Right.
And that turned into almost 5 years, 4.5 years. I stayed there growing up in a law enforcement background. My dad was a PD officer for 26 years. Okay. So I grew up in a home where law enforcement, my mother was a dispatcher, so law enforcement was always right there, grew up around it, kind of knew what it was about, but never really got the itch until 1989 when I got to basically see it firsthand, live it, and like I said, just fell in love with it.
What when you went to the jail initially, or to the county initially, what were you doing there? When
I first started over there, I was what they call a jailer dispatcher.
Okay.
Which at that time you was the dispatcher and the jailer. One done both jobs. So, and from there, I done that for just a little bit. Then I became a transport deputy.
Okay.
And back then, you transported every day from the county jail to the courthouse. Now they do all that through Zoom or closed circuit television. There's no transporting back and forth. But back in those days, it was every day you transported prisoners back and forth to the courthouse. So I done that for about a year. And then I was able to get my certification. Sheriff sent me to Cleat. Graduated from Cleat with a certification in 1991.
When you in 1991, how many deputies were on the road, do you think?
In 1991, best I can remember, maybe 7 or 8 at the most.
At the most?
At the most, it was 7 or 8. And like I said, back then, I was young and really didn't know a whole lot about how many deputies it needed or how many that it took to patrol this county. But after 36 years, I realized there's no way you're going to get around with 8 deputies to provide 24-hour service in this county. It's just way too big.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, after I got my certification, for a year after that, I was able to work for the Narcotics Task Force. Okay. And that's where you had 2 deputies from the sheriff's office, 2 PD officers, and the district attorney had a DA investigator. And we were able to work narcotics I worked there for about a year and a half, worked Haskell County, Pittsburg County, kind of got my feel for that a little bit. and was able to gain lots of experience, see some things that I'd never seen before. Had some good people to work around that were really experienced officers. And I learned a whole lot in that year and a half just working for the Narcotics Task Force.
And so that was your whole job, was just doing narcotics
Just
at that
narcotics at that time, yes.
time? Okay.
So after a year and a half of that, I think it was 1992, 93, President Ronald Reagan came out with a big drug initiative, drug abuse resistance education, DARE programs. Started all across the country. And anyway, the sheriff at that time wanted to get involved with that, so he selected me to become the DARE officer. And like I said, it was a 2-week training. And once I got the 2-week training, I come back to Pittsburg County. And when school started that fall, we were in 16 public schools in Pittsburg County.
With the DARE program?
With the DARE program. 16 different schools. I'd go in, I would teach 6th grade. It was like an 18-week program. You'd go into the 6th grade classroom for 1 hour every week, just to kind of get the kids familiar with you, give them some training on the drugs and the dangers of drugs, stuff like that. And another thing, it was getting the children where they would come to you and speak with you, not be afraid of a police officer. That was as much to that program as it was teaching the dangers of drugs.
So that was, what, 34 years ago now, 35 years ago?
Right.
When you're doing that, you fast forward to now and you still are involved with the children.
Oh, absolutely.
That's kind of rare that the head of an agency is actually still going out and interacting with the children.
Right. And I'll tell you, after doing that for, I done it for 2 years before I left the sheriff's office. I was still active with the DARE program, but after that, 8 years, 6 years down the road, 8 years, 10, I would still have kids come up to me, and even still today, I've had kids come, or grown adults now, come up to me and just say, "Hey, I remember you being my DARE instructor back in 6th grade." And that's touching. Yeah. And to see those folks and remember that I made a difference in their life. To basically, they remember me coming into their classroom, talking to them about the dangers, but building that relationship and that friendship that I had no idea I'd reached that many people. So that was kind of a big deal for me. And now once I become sheriff, every week, Red Ribbon Week is the last week of October. And I make it a point to reach as many kids as I can during that Red Ribbon Week. And that's all based on my experience and like I said, my 2 years of DARE program.
Yeah.
So,
how many schools did you hit with the Red Ribbon Week?
Red Ribbon Week, we were at 12 different schools during the week. And I would have liked to have reached more than that. Some of our schools have school resource officers. And like I said, they kind of go hand in hand with Red Ribbon Week. So they kind of filled in a couple of schools for us. But like I said, I'll make it a big point every year to reach the kids because that's a big deal for them. Plus, it recognizes it's a week every year that the school really goes out and celebrates. And like I said, we have programs set up to interact with the kids. That's what it's all about.
And you take, so for that program, you guys took a drone, you took other deputies
right.
so the kids could meet the other deputies
exactly.
too. And
we take some of our tools. We take our drones. We take our therapy dog. We have some pedal carts that we use with some drunk goggles to simulate somebody that's under the influence.
Oh, so they could see how.
So they can actually see firsthand how alcohol or drugs can influence your judgment, your coordination, and we have a lot of fun with it.
And you guys take that to every
we
school
take that to every school that we go to. We try to get the teachers and the staff involved so the kids can, kind of have some fun with it. And it's all about having fun. And at the end of the day, it's forming those relationships, building those relationships. Yeah. So years down the road, like I said, we may have kids come up to some of the other deputies and say, "Hey, I remember you coming to my school, years ago for Red Ribbon Week."
Yeah, so, you never know what the kids are going to lock onto and,
exactly.
and remember.
Yeah. So the more kids we can reach in the community on that during that week, I know it's tiring and it's a long week, but at the end of the day, it's well worth it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yes. So I done the DARE program, and then in '94, April of '94, I left the sheriff's office, and I went to work at McAllister PD.
Okay.
And funny thing about that, my undersheriff, Lloyd London, he was a deputy with me at the sheriff's office. He left the same day I did.
Lloyd was
Lloyd was a deputy.
okay.
So we both left the same day and went to McAllister PD.
Okay.
And the reason we done that is my dad retired. Lloyd's dad was an officer at McAllister PD also during all that time. He had retired. So we were able to leave the sheriff's office, go to McAllister PD the same time. Okay. And like I said, we worked together 3.5, 4 years prior to this at the sheriff's office. So we left the same day. So we both went to McAllister PD. And over there, for the first 8 years, I was a patrol officer. Worked all 3 different shifts, just patrol officer around the city. And I done that for 8 years. I was able to get into investigations in year 9. And that was a blessing for me because I loved investigations. And to show them that, the justice system does work. But like I said, I really focused my first probably 5 or 6 years in investigations. I was focused more on child crimes. So, and that was at first I was kind of reluctant, but I'll tell you, after working child crimes and getting really into it, I realized it takes a special person to do that. Not everybody's cut out to do it. And just the joy of maybe taking a kid out of an environment where they're susceptible to perpetrators, they can't protect themselves.
Yeah.
Just the fact that maybe you can intervene. Even if you can't lock somebody up, you can take the kids out of that situation, out of that environment, which is a win-win for them.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, if you can prosecute somebody that's actually hurt a kid, that's even better. But
Yeah.
I learned
they need an advocate.
They need an advocate, and I've learned one thing: those are the hardest cases to prosecute because there's very little evidence. The child is, reluctant to testify a lot of times, is reluctant to open up. And that's where the MDT, you have a team put together of law enforcement, prosecutors, social workers, mental health workers. They work as a team to work those cases. And that became a big issue after the Ryan Luke episode. It became mandatory. Any child sexual abuse needs to be prosecuted or investigated with a representative from each of those entities, which they work together. And that has really been a game changer as far as investigating child sexual abuse cases.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I've done that for several years in the investigation, along with investigating robberies, thefts, all the others. But my main emphasis was child crimes.
Yeah. Like you said, it does take a special person to do child crimes because a lot of guys, they'll kind of shy away from, because you're going to see stuff when you do that investigation that you don't want to see.
You're exactly right.
There's going to be stuff there that wasn't in the academy.
Right.
That's
stuff that you got to, realize that you can't take that home with you and let it affect your family life because it can happen very easily.
It's probably some of the darkest stuff out there.
It is, and it's frustrating when you work these cases and you don't get a charge filed. It's very frustrating, but that's part of it.
Yeah.
You've got to do your part. You've got to do your part, and like I said, the main thing is to protect the children.
Yep.
Whether you get a charge filed or not, you protect those children. Don't put them back in that situation. Keep them away from that perpetrator. So, and that led into, with the internet booming about that time, internet crimes became a huge issue. And we was able, when I was at PD, we became part of the internet, or the ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children. Nowadays, it's all about social media. The dark web out there is full of perpetrators trying to perp on these young kids that are accessing social media. And like I said, with the technology changing as much as it does, it's I'd say daily or monthly process to try to keep up with the latest technology. But it's something that the parents have to get involved. You've got to be part of your kid's life. You've got to monitor what they're looking at on social media.
Yeah.
So.
And they all, at such an early age now, they're being handed basically a computer.
Absolutely. It's a walking computer.
Oh.
Anytime you investigate any crime these days, first thing you're going to look for is somebody's phone. That's going to tell you everything about somebody is if you get their phone, because basically it's a computer they're walking around with. And you got children walking around with computers. that they can access websites that they have no business accessing. People trying to befriend them, thinking that they're good people, and kids are so, you know, they can't protect themselves sometimes.
They're pretty gullible.
Very gullible
when it comes to
Yes.
they don't know about the real world.
You're right.
So,
You're right. So
does the sheriff's office currently have anybody that like specializes in the internet crimes?
we have a couple of deputies over there. Our investigator is a task force officer for the FBI,
Okay.
and he's also trained with the Cellbrite equipment that we have. We have some equipment where if we have a cell phone, we have the capabilities of downloading all the data, all the stored data, all the deleted data from someone's cell phone. And like I said, that's huge. The first thing you want to do in a case like that is get a hold of their phone to see who they've been communicating with, see what type of data, see what websites they've been frequenting. But like I said, we have a couple of deputies that monitor that, has been trained in that. So, and like I said, that's a full-time job really for one deputy, but like I said, we're so short staffed, we can't just designate one person, but we're doing everything we can with technology to keep up with it.
Yeah.
So
you're doing investigations at the city of McAllister, and where are you going from there?
from there, my last 3 or 4 or 5 years, I was able to not get away completely from internet crimes, but at that time, Officer Brant Gamble, Officer Preston Rogers came into the detective division, and I kind of mentored them, and they took off. I mean, they were great and they took off with the child crimes and done a great job up until the time I left. And like I said, I continued to help them and still worked a few cases, but I would mainly focus on some of the major crimes, homicides, robberies, some of the major crimes that occurred in the city. Mm-hmm. And I was able to, like I said, I've worked, I don't know, probably half a dozen homicides, some robberies by force and fear, and able to get some convictions on that. But like I said, the investigations was my passion. You know, whether it be internet crimes against children or homicides, that's what I loved. So.
Yeah. Well, I know at the sheriff's office a couple times when I needed help or I needed a little advice, you know, you were always willing to kind of steer me the right way with something. You know?
Exactly. And I want to share every bit of information I can or any experience I have with the young officers. They'll come ask me my advice or, you know, what should I do here? And I want to always take the time to, you know, steer them in the right direction, because you're going to make mistakes. I've made tons of mistakes on cases, and it's the fact that you got to learn from those. Mm-hmm. You know, don't make mistakes that's going to cost you a case or something like that. So, and it's the fact that I tell them, you know, sometimes guys, there's just not enough there to get a charge, but, you know, don't give up. You know, keep working. These guys are criminals out here. They're gonna make a mistake again. Just remember that. So don't jeopardize your integrity, your honesty, for a case that, you know, is borderline, because there'll be another day.
Yeah, I think sometimes some of the new guys in general in law enforcement get down on themselves if they file and they don't actually get the charges picked up.
Exactly.
You know, and I know when I first started, that was an issue. Like I almost felt like if my charges didn't get picked up, I had done something wrong. And then finally, as I matured a little bit in it, I was like, you know what? Sometimes they're just not going to get picked up.
You're exactly right. Experience takes care of a lot of that. And like I said, the best advice I can give somebody is make sure before you wrap the case up, go back through it, make sure you've got everything you need. You may be missing a statement or you may be missing some medical information. Just make sure that it's all there and present it to the prosecutor. And like I said, there's going to be times where it's not necessarily your fault. There may just not be enough there to prosecute the crime, but make sure you got everything that you have available to give to the prosecutor. And you'll learn that with maturity and experience.
Okay.
So
your last years, you're doing major crimes. Like, when are you transitioning out of PD? How does that happen?
Well, 2016, I retired December 31st of 2016. And funny thing, Lloyd London retired December 31st, 2016, and we both came to the sheriff's office at that time. I came in as undersheriff January the 1st, 2017. Lloyd came over. He was the jail administrator, January the 1st of 2017.
So you guys did day per day the same amount of
Day
time
for
at
day.
the agency.
Absolutely. We've been together, attached at the hip for 36 years.
Okay.
So
that's a lot of years.
that's
of
a lot of years
for
of experience.
Two guys.
Yeah. And here's the deal: we kind of think a whole lot alike. I'm not going to make any major decisions or any major purchases or anything without running it by him, running it by my staff, the admin staff over there, because, like I said, we want to be transparent for anything that we do. Mm-hmm. So I remained under sheriff for 8 years, and then June of 24, I was named interim sheriff.
Okay.
So, and I remained the interim sheriff from June of 24 until January of 25. So, January the 6th of 2025, I was appointed sheriff, and there was a special election set, and it's scheduled for June the 18th of 26.
Okay, so this coming year in June will be a special election.
Correct.
For sheriff.
For sheriff, and that will be to finish the remainder of this term, which will be 2 more years.
Okay.
So, like I said, I've already announced that I plan on running for sheriff in June. Like I said, we've got a good staff together over there.
Uh-huh.
It's an open door policy, transparency. I think that's the only way to be.
Uh-huh.
And like I said, all the deputies over there are jail staff. When all the turmoil took place a year ago, people were undecided. They didn't know what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what was going to happen. They were looking at me being the undersheriff and being named interim sheriff. Where do we go from here? What's going to happen? And that's when I sat down with Lloyd and we discussed it. We prayed about it, talked to our families about it, and that's when we decided, listen, these folks need some guidance. They need some direction. They need some leadership. And that many people looking at you because their job depends on whether they're going to provide food or shelter for their family. And we decided that, we're going to step up. We're going to make this place work. We're going to be transparent. We're going to do what's right. And that's what we've continued to do since taking over.
So you and Lloyd's going to be hip to hip to the very end?
Hip to hip as long as he'll stay attached. So,
yeah. I don't think he's going
After
anywhere.
36 years, I think we're pretty solid. We're gonna be right there together.
Yeah, it's pretty safe to say you guys know what each other's thinking.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like I said, we both born and raised here. We have no other desires. I have no other aspirations to become anything political other than being a sheriff. Mm-hmm. Like I said.
So you're going to run. Well, you've already announced you're running.
Correct.
So with that being said, like what are some of the goals that you have for moving forward?
Right.
Now?
Well, some of our goals, we've kind of narrowed them down to 3 or 4. Our first goal is to provide protection for the citizens of Pittsburg County, and that would be rural patrols, people out in the county. The citizens, they deserve police protection just like anybody that's inside the city limits. People outside the city limits deserve police protection, and that's what we provide. So one thing I did find out when I was named sheriff is I figured out the budget process, and it was an eye-opener.
I bet.
And I didn't realize just how, I guess, underfunded maybe the sheriff's office is, but I also realized that, you're going to have to make it work. That's what the excise board has allocated for you to run your office. You're going to have to make it work. So we have. So, but we're funded for 17 positions for the sheriff's office. Uh-huh. That includes the sheriff, the undersheriff, administrative staff, deputies, 17 positions.
17 for the whole sheriff's
17
office.
For the whole sheriff's office.
Okay.
Currently, right now, we have 25 deputies. So, with that being said, we have to generate funds to pay for these extra deputies. The citizens deserve it. Mm-hmm. So that money that we generate is all through what we have a contract with the federal government, the United States Marshal Service, to hold federal detainees in our jail, and they will compensate us for that. And with that compensation, that's what we use to fund the salaries of 6 or 7 other deputies that otherwise wouldn't be in the county. I think that citizens of this county deserve every bit of protection that we can give them. And like I said, that money is used solely to provide their salary, which is, beans compared to what a lot of folks are making. But
And we're the eighth largest county in the state of Oklahoma.
correct. Pittsburg County, little over 1,300 square miles.
That's
The
a lot
eighth
of
largest. That's a lot of miles. There's 77 counties, and we're at number 8 as far as size. So there's a whole lot of county to cover. And you can't do it with 10 or 12 deputies. There's
Right.
no way. Not and do it sufficiently.
Right. Yeah. There's
that's-
nothing safe about just
Nothing's safe. I mean, from one end of the county to the other, it's going to take you, even in a patrol car with emergency lights, it's going to take you 30, 45 minutes to get there. So the more deputies that we can have out on patrol in certain areas, cut down our time as far as time of arrival from the time we get an emergency call to the time we get there. Because that's important. I mean, especially if there's some type of crime that's actively in progress, you want to get there as soon as you can.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we have 25 deputies, and we fund, like I said, we generate the salaries for 6 or 7 just out of the funds that we generate from the federal government.
Well, how are you guys looking at building relationships with like the other law enforcement agencies within Pittsburg County or the other agencies that also patrol in the county?
Actually, I want to consider a good working relationship with all of them. We're cross-commissioned with the tribe, the Choctaw Nation. We have a cross-commission. With the McGirt decision by the Supreme Court in 2022, it changed the face of law enforcement for the 5 civilized tribes. Native Americans now, if you deal with a Native American, they have tribal court where they have, they can be prosecuted in tribal court if they're a Native American. Well, we're cross-commissioned with Choctaw Nation to make that arrest, to testify in tribal court, basically carry on just as we are before the McGirt decision. And like I said, that's been a huge deal for us because there's so many Native Americans in Pittsburg County.
And so, as sheriff, all of us are cross-commissioned with Choctaw Nation, and it would be right to say it's your expectation for your deputies with the cross-commission to treat everybody exactly the same and continue on with the law?
Absolutely. And that's the reason for the cross-deputization. It's not, well, you're a Native American, I can't deal with you, or I can't make an arrest. That's out the window. We can make an arrest on any Native American based on our cross-commission. And we actually bond the Choctaw Nation, where if they're dealing with someone that's not Native American, we work side by side with them every day. We're right in the middle of Choctaw Nation.
Yeah.
So, and along with them, we got Highway Patrol, McAllister PD, Hartshorn, Haleyville, Savannah, Kiowa, Quentin. We got lots of entities just within our county alone. And like I said, we try to work on a daily basis with those folks because at the end of the day, we're all serving the same purpose. Protect the people in the county, whether you live in the city of Savannah, Quentin, Longtown, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. When someone needs help, they don't care what
don't-
uniform you're wearing, what
Exactly.
badge you got on. They just want the help.
They want the help, and they want it as quick as they can get it. So, and like I said, I think our relationship with all of those are solid. And like I said, I hope to continue that. Our communication, we spent $300,000 on our communications last year just so we can have the capability to communicate with all these folks at the touch of a button, And that was huge for us because a lot of times we would be going on emergency calls. Choctaw Nation would be going on an emergency call. We couldn't communicate without picking the cell phone up and talking to them. Well, we've relieved all that with the new communication system where we can actually tie them into our communication system, talk to them on an emergency call where we all know we're all on the same page.
Right.
So that was huge for us.
So, besides the deputies, the sheriff's office also dispatches for don't they dispatch law enforcement wise for basically everybody besides McAllister or?
Besides McAllister PD and Highway Patrol, we dispatch for Kiowa, Savannah, Quentin. There may be a couple more. Haleyville, Hartshorn, Quentin, Savannah, Kiowa. They're all dispatched through our communication center.
And I only bring them up because a lot of times the dispatch they kind of get forgotten about the county dispatch. I can't say enough about them. Over the years, they have bailed me out in some bad situations.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Those folks are special. It takes a special person to sit there and be basically a 911 operator. You know, if a 911 call comes in, those folks are our lifeline. Mm-hmm. You know, and a lot of times they're the lifeline to the person on the other end. You know, if they're trying to hurt themselves, if they're in a mental health crisis, they got to kind of turn the page, see what they can do to kind of, you know, help them out as far as the mental health crisis. If it's a true emergency, if it's a gunshot wound, you know, who knows what they go through in a 12-hour shift, you know. And those folks are so important to us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot of times they get forgotten. But I'll tell you, in your situation, you know, you've been in that dispatch center when the emergency call comes in. It's pure chaos.
Yes.
And it takes somebody to keep their cool and really, you know.
They're multitasking.
Oh, absolutely.
It's insane.
Yeah.
So deputies, dispatch, the other huge part of your office is the jail.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you guys, who do you guys house as far as offenders over there?
Anybody that's charged in district court, we house. Like I said, we talked earlier about holding United States Marshal Service federal detainees, folks that are waiting to go to court in the federal system. And like I said, we've had that for about 3 years, and we will hold our average daily population at that jail is probably around 180 daily. Now, it may fluctuate to 200 on a holiday weekend, or it may reduce. It hardly ever gets below 150, 160. So, 170 people every day housing them, you know.
And that door's open 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
For other officers.
Other officers, Hartshorn, Haleyville, Savannah, Kiowa, Highway Patrol, Choctaw Nation, United States Marshal Service, FBI, DEA, all those folks. Like I said, they're bringing people to our jail on a daily basis.
I don't think a lot of the people out there understand the amount of offenders that are housed there, and
right.
the levels of crimes too. I mean,
oh yeah,
you name it, it's in the county.
But I'll tell you this much: when I started in 1989, you know, if you had somebody incarcerated for murder or manslaughter, first or second degree murder, you thought, man, this is a big deal. Mm-hmm. Today's day and time, of the 180 over there, you may have 15, 20, 25 in there for some type of murder or manslaughter, you know. Yeah. So it's a different type of, things have changed so much in 35 years. And like I said, you just have to adapt to the changes and just carry on.
And 35 years ago when you got in, you were jailer and dispatchers at the same time, and now we've got dispatchers separated, usually 2 in there at once.
Right.
And how many jailers are working at one time?
On any given shift for the jail, you're going to have at least 6 detention officers.
Okay.
6 detention officers, and like I said, they're responsible for all the detainees in the jail. And besides that, we have a full-time nurse on staff, 2 full-time nurses on staff. We have a medical doctor that's on call, makes weekly visits there. Mental health advocates are over there every day trying to provide mental health for some of the folks that are in there. That's a big deal with mental health in the jails today. We deal with that, and that's one of the biggest issues that we're trying to deal with and get taken care of at the state level. But there's folks over there with mental health that's, you know, needs treatment, absolute treatment, and we try to provide that for them, you know, through our nurses, through local Carl Albert Mental Health. Some of the folks here local, they're in and out there all the time trying to provide services for those folks.
So, I had read something about a program called Sober October.
Sober October.
So what is that going to be?
It's been about 3 years ago. I was involved with the drug court, mental health court here in Pittsburg County. And what that is, it's kind of a second chance for some of these offenders in lieu of incarceration, in lieu of going to the state prison. They have a drug court program. They have a mental health program, which they have to, there's several things you have to do to complete the program. You have weekly counseling sessions, group therapy, UAs, you got to hold a job, you've got to get your high school diploma. There's all types of stuff you have to complete within an 18-month period. Well, this young lady who had just finished the drug court program was absolutely like I said, I think they had given up on her more than once, but she finally got through. And she praises the drug court program to this day, but she started her own Sober October. And what it is, it's a group that she's just getting it started, and she's trying to find partnerships throughout the county. And she came to me because I was a compliance officer for drug court. I knew who she was, and she knew that what my place was as a compliance officer. But she wanted to form a partnership where she could start kind of a Sober October and start a program through the district attorney's office, the DA probation, where some of these folks, just like her, in lieu of going to prison, maybe mental health court or drug court's not an option for you. This Sober October, she's got a SSCCP. It's a sober-sponsored court system program through the DA's office that's just getting off its feet. She's just getting it started. I told her I'd be happy to partner with her. And what it is, her goal is to get these folks, before they walk out the door over there to the free world, give them some job opportunities, make sure they got housing, make sure they've got transportation, make sure they've got something when they walk out the door over there, some type of support. And I told her, I said, I think that's the biggest issue with somebody that's being released from jail. If they don't have a support system and they've got all these requirements they've got to do. They've got to go to the court-appointed court hearings. They got to go for counseling. They got to go for all this stuff, But if they don't have a roof over their head, a lot of times they'll end up in the same environment.
Yeah, how are they going to accomplish that?
They've got to have some structure, and she wants to get that structure in place before they ever get released from the jail over there, which I think is a great idea. And I agreed to sponsor, join a partnership with her. And like I said, she is full steam ahead. She's got the state on board. And like I said, any way that we can help these folks, I'm all about helping her. So
that's good.
Another thing that I want to touch on that's a high priority of ours is the sex offender compliance. When we come over there in 2017, there's a sex offender registry within the state of Oklahoma. Each county has their own sex offender registration. And we've had some folks, including yourself, that's came on and basically took it by the horns. And I'm proud to say our sex offender registration in Pittsburg County, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have 130-something registered sex offenders.
It fluctuates just a little bit, yeah.
130 sex offenders that are required to register within Pittsburg County. With the sex offender registration, they're either level 1, level 2, or level 3 sex offender. A level 1 sex offender has to register once a year. A level 2 sex offender has to register every 6 months. A level 3 sex offender has to register every 3 months.
3 months.
Okay. And if you're homeless and you're a registered sex offender, you have to register every week.
Yes.
So, and I want the public to be informed. If somebody is living close to their residence that is a registered sex offender, there's so many guidelines and restrictions on places where they can't live. And that's the state of Oklahoma that puts those guidelines and restrictions in place. And like I said, I'm proud to say we've kind of got all of our folks we know where they're at, where they're supposed to be living. That's not to say that somebody's moved in here from out of state that's under the radar. But like I said, we are really putting a huge emphasis on letting the public know where our sex offenders are living and residing. If they're doing everything that they're supposed to be doing and they're living in areas where they can live, we want to make sure that that's where they're staying. And so we've put a huge emphasis on that, and I'll continue to do that as long as I'm the sheriff, because the public and the citizens they deserve that.
I mean, I'll speak on it. Just I would definitely say it has. When I first got over there, when I was first allowed to come over there, and it's changed so drastically from then because Julie in there that you got running it, and then you got another guy, Roy, and then several of us deputies that are going out with it. But you definitely lit a fire under us to get that situation under control. And,
Yeah.
and there's always going to be somebody that's trying to go under the wire, under the system. But the way that you've got the program set up now, we're aware of it a lot quicker, and we're addressing the situation a lot quicker.
And I think the thing that I've seen is the offenders know that we're on top of it, and they're pretty much on schedule. They know when they have to come register. They know when they get that letter in the mail that they need to come see us, see Julie, see Roy, because they know we're going to be checking them.
Yeah.
You know, and we know that they know that there's going to be compliance checks, and they better be living where they say they're living. Like I said, you'll have some that'll try to fly under the radar and, beat the system, but I think word's got around. And I understand these folks have made a mistake, but they've also realized that there's rules and regulations in place on where you can live. And like I said, we're going to make sure you follow that.
Yeah, the office has definitely increased the amount of eyes that are on them.
Oh, absolutely.
And you were speaking about like the agencies working together. It's definitely a combined effort, but it's good to be able to do it. And I'll thank you now. I appreciate you letting me come in there.
Well, I appreciate you taking that initiative. Like I said, for the last 2 years, we have begged the commissioners and the excise board for another budgeted position just for sex offender compliance. And like I said, we haven't been able to get that done, but I appreciate you coming over there, staying on top of that, because it's been a year-long process to get it to where we're at now.
Yeah.
And that's based on a lot of hard work, a lot of time out in the field, time out here chasing tents around that people say they're living in.
Yep.
I mean, the homeless situation is a whole nother topic and a whole nother issue. But like I said, the sex offenders registration is something I'm proud of. And we've also got a list of violent offenders, kind of like sex offenders. There's a violent offender registry that we stay on top of also. So, and all those things are available on our website. Mm-hmm. You can go to pittsburghsheriff.com, check on offenders registrations, sex offender registration, violent offender registrations, and follow up on that information for the public.
And the website is you guys, is it a monthly update you guys do, like a summary of what's happened over the month?
Yes. Like I said, that's another thing that I'm kind of proud of since I become sheriff is we built this website. You can go on there and see who's in jail, who's been released from jail, check the sex offender registration, check if you're interested in sheriff sales, you can go on there and check sheriff sales. We always got a place on there for leaving tips. Also like to go on there and any news or any news release that we have, all of it's available right there on that pittsburghsheriff.com. So if the public's not aware of it, it's a site where you can gather lots of information. We try to keep it updated monthly.
You mentioned you hit your two previous goals. What's your third goal you were going to mention?
Third goal, and I think we've already seen this already put into place a little bit, is community involvement. I want to get out in the community, be involved with all the community events, anything that we can sponsor, get out there and get to know people face to face, learn some of the folks in the community, some of the issues. Like I said, I want to be approachable. My deputies, like I said, I told every one of them, be approachable. If you see kids around, take a knee, get down on their level, befriend them. You may make a difference in their life and never know it.
Yep.
But get involved. I want to be involved in the community events. And like I said, be approachable, be somebody that's transparent. And like I said, I want to run an office that the folks are proud of. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I'll be willing to meet with anyone, discuss anything anybody wants to talk about, because like I said, we've got an open door policy, and that's the way I want to keep it. So,
yeah.
And I think all that stems from being raised in this area. They've been here my whole life. I'm almost 60 years old, and like I said, I'm not going nowhere. I want to stay here.
There's probably nobody that you don't know at least just one person removed, I would think, after being here that long.
Well, being here that long, between me and Lloyd, there's lots of folks that we do know. Some of them are the same people, some are not. But like I said, just the fact that, you know, we're not going to be soft on crime by any means.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna protect people. We're going to obey the law. We're going to enforce the law. You know, I believe in the Constitution. You know, right to bear arms. I'm a Second Amendment proponent to the very end. You know, people have the right to bear arms. Mm-hmm. They have the right for, you know, freedom of religion, freedom of speech. I understand all that, and I will, you know, protect people's rights for that. So, but I also want to realize that I'm also community oriented, and some people deserve a second chance. You know, some don't. You know, that's decisions you base off each individual case. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm not against giving people second chances. So, if they deserve one, and show that, you know, hey, you know, I want to do right. I want to give them that opportunity.
Yeah. It definitely individual based. I mean,
yeah.
Some people, what you've done is so heinous you don't get a second chance.
You're right. You're exactly right. Some crimes just don't qualify.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something that's each individual case has to be studied and determined by that.
Yeah.
So.
And then some people, I mean, like, everybody has a bad day. Everybody's made a mistake out there, and I mean, I think a lot of times, did you get caught when you made that mistake?
Right.
You know,
exactly. And that's something that the prosecutors and investigators need to take into consideration. And you know, I think the prosecutors and judges are absolutely giving people a second chance, mm-hmm. if it's any way possible. So, but like I said, being rooted here, me and my wife been married 32 years. We both grew up here.
She put up with you for 32 years.
32, yeah. I finally let her retire, and she's a whole lot easier to get along with, I think. But like I said, my children, I've got a son Garrett's 40 years old, lives in Tulsa, but he grew up here. My daughter, Mackenzie, lives in Ada. She's married, so we got 2 children, 9 grandchildren. 9.
All right.
And
Christmas is expensive for you.
Expensive, you're right, but I'll tell you, grandkids are a whole lot better than kids.
Oh, yeah?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. I do have one last question I ask everybody, and I feel like if I didn't ask you, I'd be cheating us. What is something 35 years later in law enforcement that you were only going to work there 4 months until you got a coaching job, but 35 years later, what would you tell 19-year-old Frankie?
I would tell him, you're not going to win every case. There's going to be times you're going to be the loser in some of these deals. You've got to just put that in your back pocket, store it in your back of your mind. Don't take it personal. You know, there's going to be winners and losers. You know, and a lot of times that winning may not be as gratifying as the losing, but at the end of the day, you got to remember, you're here to protect the people, do what's right, be transparent, be honest. Integrity goes a long way.
Yep.
So that's what I would tell him, because at a young age or a young officer, you got to beat yourself up over stuff that really is not that important at that time, because there's going to be brighter days ahead. So
yeah. Well, Sheriff McClendon, I appreciate you coming on.